Minister, thanks so much for joining us. Let's start by talking about the current status of Pakistan's economy. The World Bank prediction for growth for the 25-26 financial year is 2.6%. Now, it's been a little over a year since the IMF approved that $7 billion loan to help stabilize the country's economy. The IMF also recently conducted a review. So what can you tell us about efforts to restore the economy, and what are the main challenges you're facing?
Yeah, so since the time we, I think, last met, we have consolidated gains on the macroeconomic stability front. So with respect to the fiscal side, the current side, stable currency, our FX reserves, which are now up to 2.5 months of import cover. Inflation continues to be a good story, which is now in single digit. Policy rate has been halved. And as a result of that, what we have seen during the course of this year is all global rating agencies upgrading us during the course of this year. Started with Fitch, and then S&P, and then 2 months back, Moody's upgraded us. So it's after a hiatus of 2.5, 3 years that we have alignment between the rating agencies. The second one is related to your question. IMF was on ground in Islamabad for 2 weeks of review mission. And this is the second review under the extended program to review our progress in terms of compliance, in terms of the quantitative benchmarks and the structural benchmarks. And you might have heard that the staff level agreement was announced earlier this week. So we are very grateful that the management of the fund continues to repose trust and confidence in the authorities in Pakistan in terms of staying the course, especially with respect to the structural reforms. And we continue, I mean, we have talked about it previously, it was taxation, energy, SOEs, privatization agenda, public finance. So we have made very good progress on all fronts. Privatization was one area where we didn't do too well. But during this fiscal year, which started on July 1, finished in June 30th, actually today we had the first asset. It's a small bank, but it has been on the privatization list for a long time. And it's a conglomerate out of UAE, which has come in with a successful bid. So it's going to be handed over, and they're going to invest further in terms of increasing its footprint, taking it digital, etc. And then our national airline, we are very sanguine that before the year is out, that's going to be privatized as well. Now, as a result of all of these developments, we have been able to return to the commercial markets. So we tapped the Middle Eastern bank borrowing again after a gap of about 2.5 years. It had a sweet sour ratio because half of it was guaranteed by ADB, and the rest of it, the Middle Eastern banks took direct sovereign exposure. And we are also now looking forward to actually printing the inaugural Panda bond before the year is out.
Right, and the fact that you can now access commercial banks, is that a direct consequence of the upgrades from the ratings agency?
Indeed, indeed, because I keep on saying that macroeconomic stability is not an end in itself; it's a means to an end. And the fact that we repaid $500 million of Eurobond payment, which was due on the 30th of September, right? So a few weeks back, and it was a total non-event. Otherwise, there would have been hype everywhere from the analyst community, from media, whether it's going to be paid or not paid. And we now are, clearly poised well to repay the next tranche, which is $1.3 billion in April of next year. But we are refreshing our GMTN with a view to go for now a major print after the Panda bond. And we haven't decided whether it's going to be Euro, USD, or Islamic Sukuk, but we will be looking for a large print during next calendar year.
Now, one other challenge you face is in the agricultural sector because of flooding. Pakistan experienced catastrophic flooding yet again. I mean, How big a challenge is this to the country's recovery?
Yeah. So I think everything that I've just mentioned, we are well on our way in terms of structural reforms and economic recovery. But climate change and I've said it very consistently, is an existential issue for Pakistan. We are living it day in and day out, and you pointed that out. The last time, or we had a major flooding back in 2010. It was more than a decade later that 22 flooding took place. And 3 years later, we yet have another flood. In 22, there was one river affected. This is 3 rivers affected. And agriculture got impacted vis-a-vis our rice crop and to some extent our cotton crop. So we grew at 3% GDP last year. We had estimated that we will grow a little over 4% this year. But now, given the flood situation, this will shave off a certain percentage around that. But I'm still quite hopeful that we can manage anything close to 3.5% during this fiscal year.
Now, the Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, he traveled to Beijing in September. He held a meeting with President Xi as well. China and Pakistan share this all-weather cooperative partnership. Economically, for Pakistan, what has this relationship done for you?
Yeah, so as you said, it's long-standing, ironclad partnership. Has been there, will always be there. I had the privilege of joining Prime Minister when we met President Xi and Premier Li, and that was then followed by, as you are aware, with the JCC, and that's when CPEC Phase 2.0 was formally launched. So what that means is that everything that happened in the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which was a flagship for BRI, the Phase 1 was all about, we've discussed it previously, it was all about infrastructure.
Right.
Now Phase 2 is all about monetization of that infrastructure using the special economic zones, etc. And this is very much private sector to private sector. And I can tell you, because I accompanied the Prime Minister last year as well, and before we went to Beijing for the leadership meetings, we were in Shenzhen. So what happened last year, we had a number of MOUs signed in Shenzhen. The difference this time around in Beijing, we had 24 joint venture agreements signed, right? Because so we have traveled from MOUs to JV agreements, which means there's real traction now. And it is going to be very much, private-owned enterprises from China working with the private sector. And our role is going to be making sure that we provide the necessary ecosystem.
So to get into a bit of detail, Phase 2, what is the focus there?
Focus is investment. First of all, making sure that the $19 billion plus trade that we have, we take it to the next level. And we have an FTA in place, and this can now be upgraded. That's one part of it. The second part of it is investments, and investments in all areas of mutual interest. It's minerals and mining, it's agriculture, it's AI and IT. I would say these are the basic areas, and then there are, there can be other areas around pharma. When I say pharma, I think we have a huge opportunity to get the vaccination production going in Pakistan, right? And, we saw it firsthand when the unfortunate COVID situation came in, and we had to go helter-skelter, right, finding the vaccinations. And this is one of the key areas where we can work with the Chinese enterprises to get that thing going in and the production going in Pakistan. So I might have mentioned to you previously as well because we have a good example of how these joint venture agreements can work. And Service Long March, I think I might have mentioned to you previously, is a truck tire manufacturing joint venture. Service is a large conglomerate in Pakistan, Long March from China, and about 80% of that product is now being exported. And they might be the first JV actually being listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. What we need to do is to really use all these JVs to scale this up. And 2.0 is all about that.
The last time we talked, one of the goals of the Pakistani government was to build its digital economy, its digital sector. What can you tell us about that effort right now?
Yeah, so I think the number of use cases are now really on the rise because digital, again, what I said about macroeconomic stability, digital is not an end, it's a means to an end. Faster, cheaper, better. And it also ticks another box for us in Pakistan's case, given the cash economy, which is very large, and the more we can bring it into the documented space through going digital, I think that is an additional plus. We are well on our way, and in fact, this is one area which the Prime Minister is leading himself. And it's the various verticals in terms of digitizing all government payments by June of next year. Similarly, there is a vertical so that's being led by Secretary of Finance. Governor of the State Bank is leading all our payment rails and taking it forward. The whole digital infrastructure is being led by the IT Minister, and I serve on that committee. Prime Minister chairs it, and he does stock taking on a bi-monthly basis. We just presented during this week how digital and AI-led and data analytic-led discussion has helped us in terms of our tax authority transformation. The World Bank hosted us, and we presented Pakistan's case study. And I'm not saying everything can be attributed to technology and automation and AI, but AI-led CRM, AI-led digital monitoring has played a huge role for us to move from 8.8% tax to GDP to 10.2% in our journey going forward.
Okay, let's talk tariffs. It's something that's preoccupying the entire world right now. You were able to negotiate tariffs with the United States, a trade deal there. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so we, as you said, I mean, I was leading the discussions with Ambassador Greer and Secretary Lutnick, and end of July we ended with the announcement that you've seen at 19% tariff. I think from our perspective, we have landed relatively well vis-a-vis regional competitors, etc. And we do think that this can provide a real upside to our textile exporters, especially in terms of home textiles, because that's which has been a major area of export for us from here. So I think that's where we are at this point in time. We're still working on the joint statement, which should be coming out soon, then evolve into the framework agreement, which is also in works.
More broadly speaking, what is your view on tariffs and the way that President Trump is imposing these tariffs around the world and its impact on the global economy?
Yeah, I think there was a discussion earlier this week following the discussion back in April. And I thought the overall mood is more positive than what I saw back in April, because where people thought there's going to be a huge amount of disruption, and these are still early days. Yeah. It might very well lead in that direction, but I do see and find the resilience still coming through for two reasons. Since you talk about trade, one is that a lot of countries around the world did not get into a tit-for-tat discussion.
Right.
That's one part of it. The second is, of course, all the structural reforms, the macro discussions. But the other thing is that number of countries also saw this as this challenge and converted it into an opportunity. And I'll tell you how we've dealt with it as well. That, for example, we have really now stepped up our engagement with the Central Asian republics.
Right.
Previously we had, our major trading partners, US, Europe, China, and that has allowed us to think through diversification. What we can do with Azerbaijan or Uzbekistan or Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, etc. And early days, but and I'm not saying Pakistan is the only one, but a number of other people have seen whether these south-south corridors can open up. And we have certainly looked into that and moving in that direction.
During the recent Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, which took place in Tianjin in China, President Xi talked about the Global Governance Initiative. It was focused on things like sovereign equality, respect for the rule of law, and multilateralism. Pakistan, of course, is also a member of the SCO. What are your views on that initiative?
No, I think, the overall global system, and I heard President Xi there, then we had Premier Lee on in the UNGA, also with respect to GDI initiative. I was earlier on in the year at the Boao Forum. So it's a very consistent theme which a lot of countries, including ourselves, relate to. And because, we do think, there can be ups and downs, but eventually the end state, these principles and these guiding principles make a lot of sense.
Minister, thanks so much for being with us.
It's a real pleasure.